Welcome everyone. Good morning. It's the 5th of December. We're in the home straight till Christmas, and a big part of the webinars and the Women in Tech events that we do is hopefully giving a bit of inspiration to all of us across the board, no matter what generation or what age we are or what we do. These sessions are very much an interactive and very friendly and informal session. We will be recording the session as we use a lot of the content to publicise and obviously share. Because it's really invaluable stuff. However, obviously we remove any PII or sensitive information during the sessions, but just making you aware of that. So I'm delighted to say we've got a fabulous webinar this morning for the Women in Tech Leadership session, title of which is Inspiring Future Generations Through Representation. So without further ado, and people will carry on joining us for the next couple of minutes, which is fine. We've got myself, Lou Clark, Recruitment Services Director at Crimson, and I'm actually been joined by my colleague Daisy, Daisy Freeth, who's a fabulous senior consultant in the business team here, and it's actually her contact and someone that she works closely with, who is actually our guest speaker today. So thank you, Daisy, for that introduction. Just a bit about us and Crimson. We've been established over 25 years now and 24 years now, and we are both a recruitment services business, but also have a solutionizing Microsoft product-based consultancy practice. So we're about 120, 130 people strong, and we support organisations all over the UK. Like I said, with recruitment services, providing IT contract, perm, and CIO search engagements, but we also provide invaluable solutions for our customers across higher education, housing, house builders, some local councils, boroughs, government, private, public sector type organisations, as well as some non-for-profit. Whilst we're a Microsoft partner, we obviously provide tech solutions across the board. We do a lot of IT leadership events. A big part of what we do is about sharing content, is making sure that we can broaden our network, but more importantly, the network of our customers and candidates alike. So a little bit about who we are there. We're part of the Nash Squared group. Some of you may recognise some of the brands along the bottom side there. Spinks, Talent IT, Harvey Nash. Huge organisation, globally wide. However, Crimson very much act as sort of a brand within those group of brands, mainly providing solutions across the UK and Ireland and into Europe slightly. Okay, so Women in Tech, this is all about our community. This is all about raising awareness and inspiring one another, really, and giving each other a bit of a pat on the back when we can. This was an event that we set up many years ago now in person. And then when the lovely pandemic hit, we obviously brought a lot of our initiatives online so as to keep them going and to keep people feeling that they weren't alone and they weren't feeling isolated. And the Women in Tech event was very successful on a webinar format because it allowed us to obviously reach that D&I pool even better than before. Not sort of being restricted to using trains and public transport to get to the Midlands, Manchester or London, but the webinars for this session worked really, really well. It's just an hour of your time this morning to really hopefully give you some support and encouragement and inspiration. So we have insightful speakers, we have very open discussions, there's no judgment with what we do, and we like to share our ideas and approaches and find solutions to supporting one another and our colleagues. So I'm delighted to say that we've got Bhavisa Patel, Director of Legal Technology at Evershed Sutherland, with us this morning. Bhavisa, I won't spoil your thunder in telling anyone about what you do and what your background is, but thank you so very much for joining us this morning. And we've got quite a lot of content to get through. We will be using the Q&A button at the top. Sometimes chat for certain organisations doesn't allow people to use that function, so we've kind of adopted the Q&A model. So raise your hand if you want to ask a question. It's very friendly, very informal. There will be certain pauses throughout the presentation, but if you've got a question, let's not forget it, because my mind's like a sieve at the best of days. So raise your hand and I'll be glad to bring you into that conversation when it's appropriate. We've also got my colleague Natasha Hall joining us today to really, I think, enhance and support some of the observations that Bhavisa's had with her career. And Natasha's an apprentice on at Crimson, who joined us a few years ago, and she's going to also just share some of her insights and thoughts as well. So lots to go through. So like I said, raise your hand. Don't feel afraid to ask any questions, but it's a very informal, friendly A really great webinar today. Right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Bhavisa. Welcome, Bhavisa.
Thanks, Lou. So thank you all for joining and welcome to today's session. I'm hoping that you'll find it quite interesting and hopefully inspiring. So I thought I'd start just by giving you a little bit of background about myself and know a little bit about me. So I moved to London about 14 years ago, but I'm originally born and bred up in Bolton, just outside of Manchester. And yes, the pun is intended, because for those of you that don't know, Bolton is actually the home of Warburton's bread, and we do not allow any other brand of crumpets into our house. So I'm just going to put it out there right at the start, Warburton's bread do make the best crumpets, although other bakers are available. Outside of that, I grew up with 2 shops. So we had 2 shops in our household growing up. My uncle had his for about 30 years. So he bought it way before I was born. And then my dad bought his newsagents and had that for 20 years. So at one point there was 2 shops in the family. And I talk about my family a lot because I'm a huge family person. My dad, again, is one of 7. And all of his brothers and sisters are up in Bolton as well. So I grew up with lots of great family around me, lots of aunts and uncles, and with that came a lot of cousins as well, who I'm glad to say are all very close to me today as well. So really big family person. And you can see a couple of photos on the slide there of me and my brother and my mum from Diwali this year. And then a little bit lower than that, you can see a picture of me with some of the Bolton cousins. As we've all kind of moved away from Bolton over the years, it's very rare that we all get together at the same time. But when we do, it's always a great amount of fun. A lot of those cousins have some kids now. So I'm the proud aunt of 7 nieces and nephews now, ranging from 12 at the eldest, and the youngest is about 10, 11 weeks now. And again, in the bottom corner, you can see a little photo of me and him from a few weeks ago when he came to visit us. So that's a little bit about me. And then I thought I'd kind of go through my career journey with you today and talk about kind of how that's evolved and some of the things that I've experienced and the impact of that. So I started my career at a small software house. I joined that company. It was my first role out of uni. And I did a dual role, kind of doing their tech support, but also a software trainer. It was quite a small organization, probably about 15, 16 people. And after I did that for a couple of years, kind of found my feet in working life, I decided I wanted to learn something new. And that's when I found a role at an insurance services company. So again, I started that role in their tech support team, and then kind of moved into different roles and progressed whilst I was there. I think I was there for about 4.5 years, and kind of left as a bit of a product manager in today's terms, hybrid with a BRM role at the time. It's not on the slide, but in between insurance and Eversheds, where I am today, I did do a very short stint at a large bank. I was there for less than a year, which is why I've not really called it out on the slide. But again, I was there as a BA, and then I moved into Eversheds as a business analyst as well. Had several different roles, kind of progressed through the ranks, and currently find myself where I am today, in the director of legal tech role. So I've had lots of great experiences. I've had lots of different things I've had to deal with, challenges along the way, but it's brought me to where I am today. And I have a lot of people to thank for that. One of the things I would call out, though, that through those roles, and in particular during the earlier years, there was a couple of things that kind of I picked up on. The first was that I was often in teams where there was very few or sometimes no females in the team that I worked with. So just thinking about that software house that I joined right at the start, I think I was one of 2 females in the whole organisation. Bear in mind, it was very small, but still one of 2. And then when I joined the insurance services company, again, I think I was one of two females in the entire IT organization at the time. There was a lot more when I left, which is great. But at the time, there was very few of us. The other thing I noticed is that I was often one of the only ethnically diverse females in the team, which again, I didn't necessarily see as a problem, but it was just a kind of something that I'd picked up on and something that I'd noticed. And then the other thing I'd noticed is that a lot of my managers and a lot of the senior leaders that I looked up to in these organizations were often white males and quite extrovert in personality. Personally, I have always reported into white males as well, and it's only been within the last 5 years that I've reported into a female. It's been really great in terms of opening up my eyes in new ways of thinking and new perceptions and perspectives. But historically, the majority of my working life, I've always reported into males. And off the back of that, kind of, I didn't necessarily think it was a bad thing, but the assumption and kind of my natural inclination off the back of those points was that I wouldn't progress into a senior leadership role. It just wasn't a path that was available to me. My assumption was that's just the way the working world, and there was nothing more to it. Thinking back now, it was a huge assumption and probably quite a naive one. But it's genuinely what I thought, and I didn't think anything bad of it. I didn't think it was a good thing or a bad thing. It was just what I'd found out. And bear in mind, I hadn't grown up with parents or aunts and uncles that had office jobs, so I had no expectations in this space, no experiences to draw upon. It was just kind of what I'd found in the first couple of years of my working life. Yeah, for me, that was kind of the done deal. If you could move on to the next slide, Lou. Before I talk about kind of how those first couple of years in my working life kind of played out for me and the impact of it, I just wanted to kind of talk through a couple of statistics. So 87% of organizations find that they are making better decisions with inclusive teams. Gender diverse teams are 21% more likely to make profit for their organizations. And 83% of professionals think that companies that have diversity initiatives are more attractive places to work for. So, it's not that I'm not going to sit here and say this is just about my story, or you may come across somebody else and think about it's about their story. There's been lots of research in this space, and the research is all consistent in that it does make a real difference. And these stats kind of showcase that in kind of real life circumstances. People do recognize this. They do know that it makes a difference. And that's why I think people are now making a lot of headway in this space and really, really focusing on diversity across their organizations. So kind of moving back to my story then, I wanted to talk through kind of the impact of those couple of kind of the first 5 or 6 years of my career, given kind of the three things that I called out in the earlier slide. So when I first joined the organizations that I worked for, my initial thought was, okay, I'm not going to progress into a senior leadership position. Instead, what I'm going to focus on is being really good at my job. And to help me do that, I almost thought I needed to adapt to the environment that I was in. So I started to kind of find myself doing things that didn't necessarily elevate me or showcase myself or my profile, but kind of just felt like the expected thing to be doing in the environments that I was working with and within. So it was small things and I kind of think back and maybe they weren't so small at the time, but again, moving through these things, you kind of don't think they're big. It was things like in conversations, I would tend to take a step back and let kind of the males in the room take a lead on the conversations and kind of let them be seen, let them showcase the big ideas and the big voices. I would often walk into kind of in-person rooms and people would be sitting around a table having a conversation. And before I would even sit down, they would ask me to get drinks and kind of make sure everyone was taken care of. And then through conversations, people would always kind of expect me to take notes and make sure actions were shared after the conversations. And again, after a couple of years, I kind of just started to do this stuff naturally because I thought that was the expectation. It's just part of the responsibilities of me in my role, and it's enabling me to do my role better. So I didn't think it was a problem. And I also just want to point out the organisations I worked for at the start of my career weren't by any means bad places to work. D&I just wasn't a bigger focus as it is today back then. But it all helped to kind of build up some of my experience and some of the things that I've learned over the years. And then, I did that for a couple of years. Like I said, it didn't hold me back at the insurance company. I progressed quite a lot throughout the years that I was there, and actually had a lot of good experiences through those years. But then one thing changed for me, and this actually happened when I was at the bank. So I joined the bank as business analyst, and I worked within quite a large transformation team at the time. I'd been there for about 6 months, and the team that I worked within was dotted all over the UK in different offices. And about 6 months in, we decided to have our first kind of in-person away day. So I was quite excited because I'd talked to people a lot in different offices and never met them face to face. So part of that away day, they had kind of the senior leader of that team come in from, I think she was based in the Bristol office. And she came in and did an update across the team in terms of what was going on and some of the strategy updates. And I was really taken aback by this point, because not only was that senior leader a female, but she was also an Indian female. And for me, it was the first time that I'd ever seen that. And this was 6 or 7 years into my career. And it was a real revelation point for me. It was a real life kind of, you have to see it to be it moment. Because having seen that, I just sat back through the session and listened to her talk. And at the back of my mind, all I could think was, I really respect this woman for where she's got to and how she's got there and what she's been able to achieve. And that was the big takeaway for me from that away day. Yes, I probably took a little bit away about the work stuff, but for me, it was seeing her up there talking about kind of what she was looking to achieve within the team over the next year. But even that kind of thought stayed with me for a couple of days after the event as well. And it got me thinking, like, how did she get there? And could that actually be me? Could that actually be me in the future? Like I said, it was one of those real life-changing moments for me. And it just gave me a completely different perspective and a completely different view on kind of what I'd always thought of as the way things were and the way working life was. So thinking back to that moment and the impact it had on me, now I am in a senior leadership position. I really understand the importance of having diverse leadership and having diverse speakers at different levels, because it had such an impact on me in that time of my career. You never really know who you might inspire, and you never really know who may have those thoughts in the background or at the back of their mind, what may be holding them back. So now I do find myself in this position. There are things that I tend to do, or I started to do a couple of years ago, a little bit more proactively, just to help showcase the potential and try and be that inspiration for kind of the next generation. So a couple of things that I did to help try and change and kind of lead in the way that I want people to be seen in that space was I started to kind of more proactively do one-to-ones with my team on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to build up personal relationships with them because I thought that was really, really important, not only to understand them in a bit more detail, but understand their journey and where they're trying to get to. So I started to do that, and I still currently do that. And the other thing that I changed a couple of years ago was just getting more involved in some of the diversity and inclusion initiatives that are happening across the firm. Personally, it's really important to me because of what I've experienced. But again, I wanted people to see and hear different voices and make sure that that was profiled in the right way. So these are all things that I really enjoy about my role, and things that I will continue to do. So it was just something that kind of I decided to actively and proactively do when I kind of became into this role. And then moving on to some kind of hints and tips that people might be able to take moving forward. There's no right way to do this, but there's definitely a wrong way to do this. So I thought I'd just share a few things that have helped me and things that I found quite useful. So I mentioned that, when I came into a senior leadership role, I started to have more regular one-to-ones with my team. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important to be open and curious with people. It is about understanding their skills and their ambitions, but also it's an opportunity for you to share a little bit more about yourself, and what you've faced. And it's not about just showcasing what you're good at. I think it's really important to be honest and open about what your development areas are. I drawing back to kind of my earlier years, I remember looking up to people in leadership positions thinking they're in that position because they have all of the answers to the problems and they have all of the great ideas and they're able to share those, and get people really enthusiastic and bought in. My team know I quite actively tell them I don't have all of the answers and I don't have all of the great ideas. It's with them and their voices and their ideas that we come out with the best outcomes. And hopefully everyone in my team today knows that they have a voice at that table. Doesn't matter who they are or what their level is or what their role is. They know that they can come to me and I'll always be open to listen. So sometimes I think it's about breaking down those barriers around what you are able to do and what your skills are, but also what your development areas are as well. Mentoring and coaching, I think, is really important. Again, when I've had the opportunity to do this in the past, I found it incredibly rewarding, and I really, really like doing it as well. So if you have the opportunity, I definitely think you'd get a lot of value out of doing it. And it kind of goes hand in hand with kind of the next point on the slide, around sponsorship and really supporting people. I've come across lots of people that have an immense amount of pressure, what I call rising stars. And it's about helping them shine. It's about giving them the opportunities, the right opportunities, pushing them out of their comfort zone a little bit to enable them to really shine in the right ways and raise their own profile. Not everybody is great at doing this. And again, especially in my earlier career, I was not very good at it myself. And I had that sponsorship. I had somebody that in the background was really cheerleading me on and helping me raise my profile in the right ways. And again, pushing me out of that comfort zone in the right ways, not too much, but just a little bit to help me get some exposure and push through some challenges. And it really helped me to get to where I am today. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a speaker at the time talking about this in a similar way. And his catchphrase was, "Don't just climb the ladder, be the ladder." And that really resonated with me because I think mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship go a great way towards helping other people on their career journey, just helping them understand what they're capable of achieving can give them a big boost. And then the last kind of thing I would say is just being visible. whether it's opportunities internally or externally. Raise your profile, let your voice be heard, let yourself be seen and known, because again, I had it back when I was at the bank. You never know, you might be that see it to be it moment for somebody else. And that can be incredibly powerful. Going back to it, where I am today kind of came from a lot of sponsorship, a lot of cheerleading from the people above me, but it was also that revelationary moment when I saw somebody that looked and kind of acted like me in that role, and it just played out in a very different way for me. So I kind of just wanted to share those experiences with you today, give you those hints and tips, and hopefully it's given you a little bit of food for thought as well. So
Wow.
Having heard all of that, I thought it might be a good opportunity just to kind of open up to the floor and see if that kind of has resonated, or if anyone's got any questions or things that they wanted to share, really.
Bavisa, thank you for that. Just listening to you, what I love about your story is that it is the story that is there for all of us here today, because often we see certain sort of inspiration, and I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was you know, an ex-fighter jet pilot woman speaker, and it was very inspirational, but sometimes can make people feel not necessarily relatable sometimes. Whilst it's really lovely to hear these amazing like superstar stories, actually what's great about you, Bavisa, if you don't mind me sharing, firstly, is the integrity you have. Is it just oozes out of you, and that kind of caring, passionate, kind of really wanting to help others piece. And I think, you know, you use the word self-promotion as well, and I think I was on a workshop last week with some senior IT leaders, and they were very bold to say they still today struggle sometimes with that self-promotion. So I think just sharing your own experience and story, and sometimes these things are so subtle, aren't they? They're such a combination of lots of little things that can build up, and like you've said, without really having those wow moments that really kind of bring you out of your comfort zone, it's very difficult to think, oh gosh, I can be different, I can be the change. And I just thought that was brilliant. Thank you. Can I open it up to the audience today? We've got lots of people on, which is fantastic, all generations, all different levels and abilities and skills. So thank you so much for joining. Has anyone got any questions for Bavisa, anything they'd like to ask?
More of a
Rachel, thank you. Oh, sorry. Is that Rachel with your hand up? Thank you, Rachel.
Oh, hi, Bavisa. Thanks for sharing your story today. I wonder if you can maybe share some of the challenges that you faced, you particularly in those early days when you were in a room full of men, and how you found the strength to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, it was hard. I think there was a little bit of confidence that I needed to build up, but also kind of coming from kind of an Indian culture, you're always brought up to kind of believe, you know, respect your elders and respect the males of the family. So breaking that barrier down and getting into a position where I was comfortable to talk up and, you know, push back on people and share an opinion that didn't necessarily relate to somebody else's, it came with a lot of confidence. And again, that confidence came from being opened up to new opportunities and just pushing myself out of that comfort zone every so often. So it's about really trying and really understanding what you can bring to the table, but also having somebody that gives you the opportunity to air those as well. Sometimes you need somebody to say, actually, what do you think? And kind of give you the opportunity to come into the conversation, because you're not going to do it yourself if left to your own devices. So there's a couple of things I would say: confidence, but also helping bring people into the conversation when you see they're a little bit hesitant.
Thank you, Rachel. I think also, Bavisa, on that point, I think you highlighted the being bold bit as well, and knowing sometimes your vulnerabilities and understanding and sharing those weaknesses with your colleagues and mentors and peers, I think is also such a huge quality and such an important thing to to help with that confidence factor, because being able to show your vulnerabilities, whilst it can be seen as a negative thing often in the workplace, I've had experiences where I've been able to share my own vulnerabilities, and that's helped get that relatability and help people reach out to me then with their problems and challenges, like you say. But like Rachel asked, if there are people here who are struggling to really self-promote or struggling to know how to best go about, you know, building that sort of career ladder for themselves, reach out to people. You know, there's lots of people on the network here today, and a big part of the webinars we do is to broaden people's networks and allow them to interact with like-minded people. So, you know, thank you, Pete. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. I came looking for some inspiration this morning, and I've got almost a page full of notes here. So, Barista, thank you so much for what you've shared and what you've given. One of the questions I've got for you was about a perceived, I'm going to word it as an absorbed attitude. So you were in a room and you're expected to take notes and make sure to take the actions and take drinks orders, that sort of things. And sometimes I feel that it's not just being a woman, but you've highlighted woman, an Asian in the UK, and a Northerner, and often those diverse groups, and yes, and I'm including Northerners in there as well, you're put down. So you've got to find your confidence to move forward, but the family values seem to be important to you as well, and that respect has got to go both ways. But how do you find the strength to sort of to keep going? I mean, as a woman, you're expected to care for everyone. As a Northerner or an Asian, there's a kind of I mean, I've got Asian blood in me as well, but there's an expectation of you won't succeed or you're separate. Or how do you get over? Because you've got a whole list of challenges, and yet you've still become successful. And these are the kind of inspiration I'm looking for as I build and develop myself.
Yeah.
And I want to take advice and support and direction from you.
Thanks, Pete.
If you'll share that.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's kind of a couple of things that I personally do. So you're right, family is a big thing for me, both inside and outside of work. So outside of work, I obviously have a big family, and I go to them whenever I have a bad day. They're the first people I go to, whether it's FaceTiming one of the nieces and nephews or speaking to my mum or my aunt. They're always at the end of the phone. But then also kind of within work, they are my work family. You know, you spend so many hours a day with the people that you work with. You have to get on with them, and you have to find a way to build the relationships to make that working life a little bit easier. So I do consider the people I work with my work family. And with that mindset, it's all about how can we support each other? At least for me, how can we support each other and build that family together? And then in terms of the resilience, I have kind of built that up over the years. And a lot of people will take inspiration from kind of celebrities or people that they see out on TV or whatever. I actually take a lot of inspiration from, again, my family. And the reason for that is, you know, I look at my dad and his family. They all came to the UK because they were basically kicked out of their country in Uganda a couple of years ago, due to the whole kind of Idi Amin piece. And then I think about my mum and my aunt. My mum was brought up in India. My aunt was brought up in Zimbabwe, and they both came to the UK because they had to have arranged marriages. So all of them kind of found themselves in the UK, having to leave their home towns and their home lives and build new lives here. And they've all done successfully. They've all, you know, raised us all, my cousins. We're all great, and we've all kind of done well in our careers, in our own right. But I don't have to look very far to find the powerful inspiration, because it is within my family. And whenever I find a challenge in work or in my personal life, I always take a step back and think about the things that they would have experienced and what they may have gone through.
And get some perspective.
Yeah, and in comparison, I find myself like nothing would compare to what they've come through.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete, for that question. I'm going to move on.
Thanks.
Visa, can I just say that was really heartfelt, and thank you for sharing that. And Pete, great question. Really open and really transparent there. But Visa, thank you. Let's move on, because I'm just really mindful of time. Thank you so much. We've obviously heard Bavisa's story, and what I wanted to do in this session today was bring someone from the newer generations, as I call them, into the team. And Natasha, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly. But Natasha Hall, who's joining us today, is a D365 functional consultant at Crimson. She joined our apprenticeship scheme a few years ago now, and has absolutely blossomed, is the right word. And I thought it would be quite interesting to get some perspectives from Natasha, especially for those aspiring leaders on the call today, or people in IT leadership roles, or aspiring to have a successful career and wanting to share their own experiences. Because obviously understanding and different generations and how people think and work and their desires and passions is a big part of obviously how we make the world a better place. So Natasha, are you with us? I can't see you on my screen, bear with me.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, Natasha. Right, so do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself before we start?
Sure.
I'm going to have a little interview with you, aren't I, and ask you a few questions, I think.
Yeah, not a problem. Morning, everyone. So
Morning.
I'm Natasha, and I am a Dynamics 365 functional consultant at Crimson. So I kind of came in as an apprentice, having no experience in technology.
Fantastic.
Then like basically building up and learning from being a tester to then being a consultant and just working with different customers, really.
Okay.
Them and guiding them.
Thank you for joining us. Right, so I'm going to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind, Natasha, just to sort of get an idea as to your own experience relative to Bavisa. So starting at school, I suppose, because it's a big part, isn't it, in how it kind of gives us the inspiration and the direction, let's say, to young careers. So how did your school, when you started, encourage you to pursue a career in STEM, in science, technology, engineering and mathematics type discipline? How was that encouraged within your school environment? Do you mind sharing?
So I think the biggest one maybe to mention is I came from an all-girls grammar school. So it was very much of a using education as like your driving forward sort of thing, and especially since it was an all-girls school, so we didn't have as many males, particularly in the school. So it was very much like I guess getting rid of some of the stereotypical of what is a men's sort of like career, what is a male sort of qualifications you can get. They very much just opened all doors for us. So they very much was like, okay, you enjoy maths, become a mathematician. You enjoy physics, become a physicist or become an engineer. No barriers.
And you said before it was about focusing on achieving and striving in your career of what you were interested in, like you say, and not being swayed by sort of the society norms, so to speak. And they really pushed you into really understanding what STEM opportunities there were. Is that fair to say?
That is 100% the case, especially since you usually think about females and they might do food tech, they might do some sort of more quiet sort of roles where they very much just kind of put that onto the side and they're like, oh, you enjoy woodworks, you enjoy engineering, kind of going that
you got that motivation early on. Okay, great.
Exactly.
And what drew you to pursue the apprenticeship route, do you mind me asking, when you were looking to leave school and having achieved your qualifications so far? Why did you go down the apprenticeship route as opposed to maybe options for straight into university or that, this, that and the other? What was the main motivation for you there after finishing school?
So I think, especially coming from like a grammar school, they very much push you towards universities. But I think they did a good job of kind of highlighting apprenticeships was also an option. Yeah. So I didn't close any of my doors. I made sure I checked unis and apprenticeships just to see what else is out there. So I ended up applying to various different kind of areas, so like finance and also computer science, just to see what's out there. And I ended up noticing after a while that I was drawn to a lot of kind of companies that were quite diverse in terms of maybe people of color, also females to males, just because it's more eye-catching both on the websites, advertisement, that sort of thing. And it was just very much like, I guess, you could notice yourself fitting in to some of these kind of companies rather than being, you know, the maybe token person in the company, or, you know, being quietened in a sea of like maybe men.
So you found them quite relatable and not very intimidating then, is that what you're saying? So by actually recognizing organizations that were promoting the diversity and inclusion in the workplace, it helped you feel less intimidated. Is that a fair thing to say?
Exactly, yeah, especially since coming from an all-girls school, you know, you're sort of more confident with more females, and then coming into just what is a male-dominant field of IT, you know, it's quite intimidating. So kind of finding more people similar to myself, I felt a bit more confident.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Natasha. And therefore, obviously joining Crimson as an apprentice, what has your experience been like working with Crimson?
I feel like when I'm listening to what Bavissa mentioned, there are definitely challenges. And I feel like all of those key improvements Bavissa mentioned about kind of highlighting and promoting females and just diverse culture, I think Crimson sort of did that, at least from my perspective. I think the first one being Kat did such a great job, especially since she was there with the interview stage, promoting, pushing the apprenticeships, and then also kind of guiding me into Crimson, because she was like my first manager and sort of just supporting and being there, like, I guess, someone I can go to a little bit more of confidence, especially since the rest of the people were males, and so just a bit more of a comfort for myself. And that
acceptance is really important, isn't it, Natasha? And I think, like you say, Kat was obviously head of the apprenticeship academy and scheme, and now is our head of people and head of change and transformation within Crimson. But having someone who was able to be that confidant and also give you the push and the you know, the sort of what did we call it earlier, that sort of promotion, and really sort of looking at the rising stars, as Bavissa said, having that person to really showcase you when you wouldn't have necessarily put yourself forward really helps, doesn't it? That's great. And you mentioned that you've actually, whilst being at Crimson, to me I think before, you've mentioned that you've seen people being promoted into roles as well, which has really helped with your own inspiration. And also I think you shared with me about customer meetings, because obviously a lot of things are online these days, aren't they? So like Bavissa said, sometimes in a tech world it's fantastic and it's convenient and it encourages D&I when you've got technology helping to bring people together, but also it's difficult sometimes to build those relationships, isn't it? And to really feel you know, that you can relate to people or open up to them from a sort of remote fashion. So working with colleagues on customer calls, have you had experience of how they've helped you, you know, sort of with your own confidence in that customer facing piece, would you say?
100%, because I feel Crimson can only do so much internally, right? You know, promoting females. But if you're coming to customers that are just not very receptive for females, especially in either a more technical position, if they see another male on the call, potentially they might think, oh, they're the default tech expert rather than the female. So it was definitely a challenge, but I was very lucky when I first kind of came into my position, into my role. I was put on a project with just another female called Kaylee, and she very much was like quite strong character, I think, and being that I guess her way of approaching with these customers was very like inspiring, I would say, with her strong character, being you know, being that go-to person for the customer as well, which were all just males. So it was very much like, how did she do it? She very much was being the person that know it all sort of thing. Not
and
saying
being
she's a know-it-all,
consistent, I think you said
but
as well, being very
consistent,
consistent, being very perseverant. And because she'd taken the time, probably more so to research and really put a lot of the background prep in, I think you said to me before, that allowed for her to really build that rapport and build that credibility with her audience, her customers. And by seeing her do that, you said that it enabled you to really learn how to similarly kind of put yourself out there. Fantastic. That's obviously the experience that you shared. Why do you believe, Natasha, just finishing off, why do you believe that visibility of women in tech is so important then? What's your personal takeaway from your experience?
That's a really great question. I know that Bavissa mentioned in her things to do to improve or to kind of help promote yourself. I've tried to do that myself. So I try to attend various different events external to Crimson, just to show myself being that go-to tech expert somewhere. So going to maybe careers events to show like the new generation coming in that there is a female you can come to, you can follow. Also going to some Microsoft events as well, because I know that Crimson is a Microsoft Gold partner. So we try to go to some of these events, and also because they are photographed and videoed, you know, other females that might not have gone because they're like, oh, it might be all men, or might be just white men. You know, they've realised there are young people, there are young females there that they can feel a bit more comfortable going to those events and just promoting technology.
Natasha, can I just say thank you so much for just sharing your personal experience and also putting yourself out your comfort zone, right? Because that's a big part of this whole session today, is really feeling bold and brave to share your message and story. So thank you. Has anyone got any questions for Natasha, or before we move on just to some sort of hints and tips to take away for today? Anyone would like to say anything? No? Good. I think it resonates really across the board, Natasha, that yeah, you really came across there as an extremely credible, and I know you'll underplay this, but you've been receiving awards, and obviously you've done your degree apprenticeship as well, and you had an outstanding result with that. So congratulations on that, and thank you for your time today. Okay, brilliant. So just moving on then. So we've obviously we've heard from two lovely speakers today, and Bavissa, thanks for sharing your story. And I think you know, really sort of going back to some of the evidence-based stuff and some of the stats here, because you know our personal stories are one thing, but like Bavissa said right at the beginning of the session, you know, there is lots of evidence and lots of things that really do really evidence why D&I in the workplace is important, not just for women, but across the piece. So more than half of women in tech started in non-tech roles. So when organizations are looking at how they can create diversity and inclusion in their workplace and potentially bring new people into their organization, they've also got to look at how they can retain people within their organization, because it's one to attract people in, but if when they get there then their experience is not what they were hoping for, you will soon lose that reputation and lose good people in your workplace. And a big part of doing that is to look at how you can promote and how you can upskill individuals within your existing teams. So maybe look across your organization and highlight the need for those diverse entry paths like Natasha experienced, but also how you can promote people within your organizations as well. 19% of women began their careers with industry certifications compared to 13% of men. Not a massive difference in stats there, but a real big stat to show sort of how passionate, I believe.
Well.
Oh, sorry, is that someone just on on speaker there? If you can put yourselves on mute if you're on the call, that'd be great. So yeah, so obviously a nice interesting stat there, and hybrid working policies. So the pandemic has really changed our lives, let's be honest, and across the globe, and the option now for hybrid working has of course increased diversity, with minimal office mandates leading to 20% more female hires. That's okay, Olivia, thank you. So yeah, you know, being a working mum myself and a big part of my own career, there was a huge juggle and challenge. And Pete so kindly mentioned earlier that in his view, you know, women kind of just care for everyone and they're always thinking about everyone. And that's really lovely for you to say that, Pete. And whether that's the case for all women or not, I'm sure there's you know, everyone's got different purpose, different priorities in their lives. But for me as a working mum, Similar to Bavisa, I found myself in a quite male-dominated environment. I absolutely thrived in it. I didn't see it as a setback at the time. However, looking back, when I went to have children, I then did experience some barriers actually when I came back into the workplace, and it was really quite overwhelming at first. But through the support that I had and through reaching out and often putting myself out of my comfort zone in quite a forward way, I believe that was down to my personality a lot of the time rather than necessarily having those windows of opportunity. And I'm sure I annoyed a few people along the way when I was so bold as to ask for representation of myself also, because a big problem for some people is actually knowing when to not speak, right, and when it's actually better to just listen and learn. So, you know, we all have different challenges, but yeah, no, I do think the flexibility now that hybrid working and that model offers females in the workplace, particularly who may look for a variety of reasons to have families or need, you know, or don't necessarily have the same privilege and support groups of others. I think it really helps. So bear that in mind when you're obviously trying to encourage people to be in person, because as a salesperson, I think it's massively important for organizations and leaders to bring people together. Like Bavisa said, there was opportunities in her career where those conferences, those workshops, those sessions really rang home, really, in terms of really brought it home in terms of what opportunities were out there for people like herself. However, you know, it's about getting that flexibility piece right. So some tips to take away for today. Talk to your teams. We've got an employee action group within Crimson, and we're really proud of some of the initiatives we have. We don't always get it right, and we like to listen and learn, but it's about giving a voice, giving opportunities for communication, giving opportunities for feedback, and sharing that feedback amongst your teams, and working to the best of your ability as an organisation and as a leader in listening to your employees and understanding ways that you can offer mentorship and coaching opportunities, opportunities to spotlight and to introduce new people into putting themselves out of their comfort zone in sessions like today, etc., etc. Make sure your company policy does what it says on the tin, because often people are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to ask for help because they feel that may show them being vulnerable. And whilst I've hopefully, and Bavisa's hopefully highlighted that is as important a part of your career as not, working with your people team, making sure you've got policies that actually support and help your employees across the board is obviously a big takeaway. So make sure you have a policy on D&I. What does that mean? What support can people get? And set measurable goals within your organisation to make improvements and to make change happen quite clearly, and be bold with communicating that. But recognise that those communication channels should come in a variety of sources. Not everybody enjoys speaking up on a conference call. Not everybody enjoys putting themselves forward and giving their opinion on a tech forum like this. So making sure that there's lots of different ways, both written and in person and in sessions like this, is really important for an organisation to get right. I think sometimes we kind of go down one route of communication and it doesn't necessarily land with everyone first time. So trying that in many different forms is important. Reviewing your job ads for inclusivity, and I'm really able to offer myself and my team to help anyone on the call today who may be looking for some support with how they promote their brand in the workplace. Please don't hesitate to get in touch, because we've got lots of hints and tips and lots of ways that we can work with you to help improve the language you're using, and some other partners that can actually help you in that sense as well. Provide diversity training, make people aware of what diversity means to individuals and how you can ensure that you've got forums and support groups in place to give people opportunities. So do training and development across the board for all of your employees, so that those working with people from different backgrounds and different privileges to themselves understand and recognise how important it is to have that diversity in the workplace, and showcase that commitment to diversity through doing initiatives yourselves. Focus on hiring for a culture ad, not culture fit basis. People do talk about, they're not the right culture fit. We often get feedback from some customers, and we have to advise to say, well, okay, that's great, that's your culture. And classically, some industries, Bavisa called out the industries she worked in throughout her career, some industries have traditionally and historically been quite maybe stereotyped in terms of their culture. But I think, like Natasha said, there's lots of initiatives that companies and organisations can do now to change. And this isn't a tick box exercise. It's not a destination. It should be a journey. You should always be looking to improve and make those improvements along the way. Building a diverse talent pool through your partnerships and your outreach is really important. You know, let's be honest, we like to associate ourselves with good friends, good people in our network, because we want that they give a good impression of who we are and what we stand for. And similarly within an organisation, make sure you're partnering with outreach programs, community programs, giving opportunities to schools and communities around you, and also the organisations you choose to work with, the customers you choose to work with is a big part of how we can promote a really healthy, diverse workplace. And use things like blind screening and diverse interview panels to really help to diversify your attraction methods and ways of working. And again, my team and I at Crimson are really happy to help anyone who might need any support with that. And make any adjustments. Don't be afraid to get it wrong, because you know you're all really trying to do things right. You're all on the call today because you're interested in this subject, and it's really important that we talk about it a lot. So anyway, a few tips to take away for today for that. So has anyone got any questions, or has anyone got anything they'd like to share? And are you happy to do a quick poll on your thoughts from today's webinar? So how useful have you found the information that our colleagues Bavisa and Natasha have shared today? And you know, if you've got any questions for us, don't hesitate to reach out. Like we said at the beginning of the session, we will be sharing the content of this session on our social media. It will be edited and removed from any PII information or anything, but yeah, please do share your thoughts for today. Okay, great. Let's have a look. Thank you. Okay, so I've managed to get in that poll. Where can I see those? Where can I see those stats? Oh, don't worry, we'll take that away. Thank you. That's brilliant. Oh yeah, that's an internal thing. Brilliant. Okay, so some little QR codes there. If anyone wants to get in touch with Bavisa, she'd be very happy to reach out in her network to you and offer any advice she may. Thank you so much, Bavisa. Thank you, Vicky. That's great. Have a great Christmas yourself. But no, thank you for today. It's 9:31. Bavisa, just again, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and being an inspiration to people, and Natasha also. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely morning. Take care. See you later.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, Kat.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.